I don't want to liken it to a hero like perhaps the Earthshaker in that same vein, but it's picked for more or less the same reason. Whereas if the storm ever initiates on a hero, you put the pit on top of them, and then they have to make a very hard decision. Do I stay in and actually take this fight, or do I have to play on the outside and wait for these engagements? Not just that, Underlord is just a little bit too tanky for a Storm to ever comfortably kill. That hero is just very obnoxious. Of course, most of your damage is magic, but the passive isn't really the part. It's just naturally just impossible for you to kill very easily. And for Zoomers, unfortunately, you'd love to pick a hero like Kunkka in this circumstance, but unless they want to run it off lane, I don't think they're going to go for it. So they'll go for the Juggernaut instead. Jug is a very good hero. Of course, we'll ignore everything that the Pit Ward is doing. But at the same time, yeah, it's very weird. They also are going to shove A on that Coddle, it looks like, and move Michael over to the Mirana, which it feels almost as Infamous has run out of time here. This doesn't feel like the perfect solution for what Four Zoomers were doing, to be honest.
Hmm. I do like that immediate ban though out from Infamous. You see the Juggernaut, and you have to sort of think about the Mag a little bit. That's a hero that we saw earlier today. You take the Magnus with the Jug, and that farming rate of that hero gets accelerated quite nicely, and all of a sudden your Jug has a much wider window in which he is able to outfarm and outdamage some of the other heroes at that position 1 role. So they don't want to deal with that. You don't want to have to deal with the RP either for that matter, so the Mag gets taken away. Meanwhile, on the Four Zoomers side, they get the Sven out first, and I think, honestly, that is the good move for them. Look for those position 1 heroes with the lockdown, because Infamous's lineup doesn't have a whole lot of hard CC right now to try and deal with that Storm Spirit.
Yeah, and we look at Infamous, and usually we say, okay, Lumiere, he's going to want to play a hero that naturally has that advantage where you pick him Luna, you pick him Sven, you pick him heroes that are their own catalyst for breaking out into the farming game. But at the same time, are you going to pick Luna like Black and Yellow did earlier? Is that really the best option for you? I'm really trying to think of heroes like you said, and like Four Zoomers are thinking, Sven probably would have been the best. Of course, covering their Juggernaut pick even more, Sven's been the age-old counter versus Jug for who now knows how long, especially you'd be picking it versus Chen as well. Also another hero that just killed the creeps. I almost feel like maybe we're missing something here in Infamous's lineup, like they put the Ember safe lane and then they have a Kunkka mid, something like that. But I feel like now, do you look for a Medusa? Do you look for, again, Lumiere heroes in that same vein where they're going to be their own farmers? The Terrorblade is also still in the pool for a team on Four Zoomers that doesn't really have that much lockdown. There's no perfect hero for Lumiere to play here that fixes all of their issues, I don't think.
Yeah, you're basically just gonna have to pick. Do we want a strong farmer? Then, as you said, the TB's there, the Medusa's there. They could still try for someone with a stun, sort of vis-a-vis the Luna. We have seen some teams even occasionally ban out the Wraith King. I don't think we've actually seen it picked, at least not in the games that we've been casting so far in this event. But if you really are desperate for some sort of carry with a stun, then the Wraith King technically does fit that. But it just feels like, as you said, anything that they pick, you basically have 2 to 3 needs, and you can only cover about half of them with the heroes still in the pool. So we'll see. Four Zoomers go for the ban on the Ursa, so they were a little bit more concerned maybe with the damage than the lockdown, and see what the play is for Infamous. Do they go for any of those carry picks that we were sort of talking about, or do we see some sort of switch up here? Because at this stage, ET, it feels like either one is maybe equally viable, considering where they've gone so far in this draft.
And I mean, if they go for the Medusa, they've got Coddle Medusa then, right? You got the Chakra, you don't really care about it. You're also picking it blind into Moo's offlaner. You could see Morph, but okay, then yeah,
All
it
right.
will be the Morph. It's in a very similar circumstance as we saw the Morphling versus the Monkey King, where Morph's damage is instant. Of course, you're playing Morph versus Storm Spirit, so it is going to be that race towards that Manta style before the Storm can, find too many picks on you. But at the same time, this was the soft solution, I want to say. The enemy team has very little lockdown in terms of their supports. You're going to be able to, most likely, kill this Juggernaut if you can get him at the beginning of fights. My only issue is they have very inactive supports and even more immobile and inactive offlaner. So I feel like a lot of the pressure is going to fall into Alone's lap in a lane that he is a little bit countered by Gunner. So we'll have to see. And
Yeah.
Slardar, okay. It's classic. It's the offlaner you pick when all of the good offlaners are gone, to be honest, and it gets you into the pit. So could be worse heroes.
Yeah, and I mean, all things considered, if Moo's able to farm up well on it, we could see just a relatively well-timed Blink Dagger, and then the Slardar can do all sorts of things with that. So, plenty of potential. It's maybe not the flashiest hero, but you are going to be able to get something, and considering on the other side, Infamous picked up an Underlord for Sacred, I think at this stage we're just looking for any offlaner that's going to be capable of making a contribution regardless of, you know, how we would sort of grade it. But this one, it just looks a little bit weird between the two squads. To a certain extent, I kind of like that. Both sides were forced into something a little unconventional, but really hard to tell exactly who's going to be able to get the jump. But it seems like 4-Zoomers with that Storm should have that advantage for them through the early stages of the game.
Yeah, and it's Gunner Storm. You know, you can never discount Gunner Storm from carrying or winning a game or whatever. My big issue is just how will Sacred actually translate the lead that you will always get from being a pit ward in that top lane to the actual game, because the inactivity is just there. It's whether or not this Mirana and Ember Spirit can make plays with each other constantly is really going to be the drawback. The last time we saw this Ember Mirana, we had a Tide, who was running around the map, making space, running and standing in front of heroes, where I think the pit ward just has another degree of finesse to it, where even if you're playing it well, it still might not be as effective as that other, almost better hero. It's probably the reason why it was banned.
Well, it's risky, but it's also always interesting, right? From the sort of uh, position of us as the casters, getting to see some heroes that don't get picked up all too often. So you do have that sort of excitement factor, but yeah, as you said, it opens up a lot of questions with regards to what they're going to be able to do with these heroes, and yeah, they don't really get picked up all that often for relatively good reasons. So with that in mind, we'll see how this first game plays out. Infamous pushing their way forward already under the cover of that smoke, and it's trying to get down a little bit of early vision, early scouting. Don't really think we're going to see any of these fights. Really have not seen that.
Oh, he's doing it again.
Oh,
Look at Husky.
is he really going for the... Yeah, okay. Okay. I mean, it worked out for the mid matchup. The last time he sort of pulled off the bottle play, so, you know, why not? Gunner is already a focal point in your lineup. The earlier you can sort of enable him, then the better off you're realistically going to be. It's just... It's always so strange to see the Chen just completely naked in terms of the items.
Yeah, and the more I'm looking at these heroes, I'm also figuring out the lapses in both of their judgment. Like, somehow we have a Mirana versus a Chen in this game. Like, Michael's just gonna have a field day. They can't block camps because you have a Chen, but you also have a Mirana. There's some shenanigans definitely at play here, but it's those type of games that are always the most interesting to watch.
Lumiere?
Lumiere, yeah, he skilled up Shift.
Who's got the bash? Lumiere's got to be very careful here.
Yeah, usually if they skill up shift like that, and you always skill up shift, you just don't go for the fight, but okay. Well, he's at
Little
low
bit
HP.
of early greed, but that greed doesn't really pay off. It's a 2-2 split on the bounty runes, so yeah, he bottomed out on the stats. He'll try to heal back up with the Tango, but this is already a bit of a sort of funky spot in the lane, starting with this little health. And Moo, well, I mean, Bash Crush combo, always something that could maybe catch this Morphling out by surprise. So Lumiere's going to have to be very sort of mindful of the position of those other players, which is where A really just has to get him as much information as possible, try to take some of that heat off here early.
Yeah, and that's where in the top lane, it will probably slow down, as Z-Freak always likes to slow down his off lane. Just give as much net worth and XP over to the Slardar, and then it gets very difficult for Lumiere to play, because of course you are not really a ranged hero. You have to be very close to the creep wave to get these last hits, otherwise Moo is just going to keep on denying you.
Well, not doing too bad of a job here so far. But meanwhile, let's take a look over at the other side lane. Costabile and Husky, well, trying to go to work down bot. Michael and Sacred have really pushed this one forward, trying to sort of get things maybe under the tower early, and this is always the thing about the Underlord. It sort of plays out similarly to the Darkseer. You You really can't avoid pushing this lane unless you just don't want to ever use Firestorm.
Yeah, and you honestly don't mind it. It's funny, Husky is took an enemy creep and has just been denying with it, and it's been honestly very effective. Of course, it's not as good as the Hod, but still pretty good. But you always force the wave in, and then the wave pushes into you, and then you're completely fine. Sacred even has to change up his pit's positioning just because he's afraid of getting denied, and that's where Michael's also pretty nifty over there by taking it away with the arrow. But that's where this lane really can't be pressured. It's the problem with Pit Ward. Even though you're definitely going to get something, aside from having a lot of base damage and kind of beefy right clicks, that's where your lane kind of begins and ends. You're just going to let this jug more or less free farm here, and you always need to be very cautious because it is a jug. You get a few too many points up in Blade Fury, and suddenly you're under a very deep threat. Threat that Michael cannot really help because he's a Mirana. He's going to be focusing on his own game as well, I can only imagine.
Going to be looking for some of that early farm, look to get out of the lane so that your Underlord can pick up that solo XP, but this is where a lot is going to sort of depend on exactly the way that Sacred wants to play this one out, because we've seen situations. If he can find this early farm, if he does well for himself and gets those items, that's going to be big, but he then has to make use of those items, right? You need to have him be that tanky hero that defends a lane or puts together some sort of split push, something along those lines. Sacred cannot farm here just for the sake of it. Anything that he's looking for has to contribute to pushing the tempo forward for his team. Otherwise, you're farming on this Underlord for really not a whole lot.
Yeah, and that's where I do wonder where we're going to see him kind of lie, and it is hard for Costa Vila here. I mean, this is just a bad trade for both of them. Costa Vila is just going to start getting right-clicked, but he gets these denies. That's all he wanted to do with that, just trade some of his HP. Because again, these supports are really not active. No one can really kill anyone, and anytime you get a good creep on Husky, it's immediately going to get arrowed. So I think that's why he's grasping for straws a little bit.
Husky coming in with the Hill Troll Priest heal onto his teammate a couple of times. That's when you know your Chen player just doesn't have much else to do, right? If you're throwing out the smallest possible heal in the game, but they're looking for the fight now onto Sacred. Unfortunately, this is the downside of Husky's build. Without any points in the sort of penitence, you can't really get all that aggressive unless you have a strong creep to sort of set up that aggression, and again, it's a Hill Troll Priest. This is pretty much the exact opposite of an aggressive creep.
Yeah. See if he's got his auto clicker set up, but that's also where what this Sacred Underlord eventually does do, of course, probably going to be whenever he gets his hood, he's still going to lose trades versus the Jug for quite a long time here. But after that, he's going to be the sole defender of a lot of these towers, and that's where can you keep the landing stage going? It's the name of the game with this hero. If you can defend this top tower for an incredibly long amount of time, that's where heroes like the PA, like earlier, or the Morphling really start to shine. And mid, they're so greedy. Double Fairy Fire.
Hello?
Oh, Michael.
Whoa.
Clean.
Alright, yeah, that... I mean, if you're Gunner, there's no reason to expect that. Michael just lays the trap and... Uh-oh, Siegfried. He's going to get hit up by the chains. Michael needs the arrow connection, though, to... No, he does not. Wow, Alone says, I'll do it myself. I got it. Everything's okay. I hit level 6. I got my remnants, and they make the jump in. So you go from, as you said, that double fairy fire just inches away from death play to Michael's TP suddenly sort of shifting that on its head, and Infamous get both of the kills there.
Yeah, it's really nice for Alone. We already spoke about how important his game is going to be for kind of the long term here for Infamous staying active out on the map. Of course, he is getting doubled up in CS just a little bit because Gunner, you know, he gets to do whatever he wants. And in addition to not having to buy his bottle, Husky has also kept a creep in the mid lane very annoyingly because, of course, Husky doesn't really need to do very much else. Unfortunately, the Hill Troll did get cleaned up there by the arrow, but yeah, Alone.
Alone gets hit by one stun. The second one, yeah, there you go. Slight gets him away. He'll fall back. And Illuminate, even flying through there on the back end just to make sure he's going to be okay. But now A has given up his position, and Gunner wants in, looking for the kill. Haste Rune popped, should be able to find that first pick off, and now Alone and Michael need to be careful because the Storm Spirit has gotten around behind them and behind their tower. So, trying to play it safe a little bit here. Gunner should be running out of time with that Haste Rune momentarily, but you see the damage they're putting in onto the tower here. We're 6.5 minutes in, and that tier 1 is not in a healthy position. So that is just their first kill of the game, but if they can make more plays like that, get the supports rotating in, and put more pressure on the tower, then, well, those early kills that Infamous had picked up are not really going to matter nearly as much.
Yeah, and it's not like Sacred can abandon his lane just yet to head over there, so it's just them snowballing. And of course, for Zoomers, whenever they have these creeps, whenever Husky is on the Chen or his Enchantress, he can get aggressive. He can afford to stick around a little bit longer. You see him basically running between that medium camp and the mid lane over and over, especially because Gunnar is looking to steal a lot of these stacks that A has made for himself. Even though A is going to get started on them a little bit as well. But that's a huge stack for Gunnar right there, but not like he can take it just yet.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Chains coming down into Arrow. Z-Freak tries to throw out the Bramble Maze there, hoping for a little bit of cover for his buddy, and I believe that's enough to get Gunnar away for now. He dodges the Illuminate. If that had connected, things could have gotten dicey, but Alone, he's still actually trying for it, and that forces the TP, but Alone, he tried. Goes in with the last remnant there that he really had the mana for, and wasn't able to get the kill, but it gets close. Gunnar's forced to fall back, and he didn't really get too much of those stacks, so I'm sort of trying to preserve that for the time being, and they will at least be partially successful. Meanwhile, mid, tier 1 tower does fall. A's at least able to deny it, but that's an early bit of map control, all of 8 minutes in, and maybe 4 Zoomers can do something now that they have more room to operate with.
Yeah, and not just that, it makes it much more difficult for Alone to actually play around these runes. He's really going to need to stick his neck out a little bit further when it comes to that rune control. Of course, he's in on an arcane rune right now, so got a little bit lucky there, but that's where going forward, there's definitely going to be some more risk involved, and that also makes me wonder where Sacred's eventually going to end up, because that was his job. His job is now done. He's free to encapsulate this bottom
Gunnar
lane,
in for the kill, looking for Michael.
yeah.
That arrow hit a creep. Or, not sure if it hit a creep or if it hit the ball lightning. Either way, it doesn't hit the Storm Spirit in a position to actually stun. Michael does get taken down. Look at Alone go, though. He's hoping he can find that. He had the Arcane Rune, so he may as well try, but he goes south, Gunnar goes north, and Storm Spirit's able to get away with one there. That should not have really worked in a 1v3, but he gets the kill and falls back. Speaking of kills, though, Lumiere, yeah, catches Z-Freak sort of wandering a bit too far into his own jungle.
Yeah, it's pretty free for him to do that. I think he just became the Dark Will, put the Cursed Crown on top of him, and then unless Z-Freak immediately reacts to that, you just die. So, unfortunately, Lumiere isn't the best here at farming these stacks, but at the same time, there was already a push beginning in the top lane. It was just Husky rotating up here, and how do Infamous want to deal with this? Sacred has just been farming his large camp stacks in his own jungle, so he is still on this bottom side of the map, and okay, here we go. This is going to be a mistake, though.
5 heroes up. Sacred's going to start taking the damage from the Omni. Arrow doesn't hit onto anything. Sacred already dropping. Not able to bring him down just yet, but they will eventually get the kill, and now they want more. Michael's going to get hit up by the Vortex. Pulled back in, stunned up, and taken down, and this fight is already really not a fight for Infamous. They've just got to back away, but they're going to be losing. No, they're not. A's able to get out just in time. Gunnar, it's a nice zip, but he doesn't have the actual cancel. But really, I'm not sure how much that matters. 4 Zoomers find 2 kills, and they're going to be able to get another tower in the form of this Tier 1 top. So now, Tier 1's taken both top and mid. This north side jungle opens up in a massive way for 4 Zoomers.
Yeah, it just feels like Infamous's response was a little bit too slow there. They needed to create that top dive into more of a dive. It felt like 4 Zoomers just got to walk their creep wave in and collapse on everyone there, and there was not really a fantastic response. Not to mention that Alone, looking at his skill build, has no points in the Flame Guard. He has gone completely into this, I need to play around getting kills. Like, look at him farm a Satyr camp. It just doesn't work. And that's where he really needs to find something in terms of getting aggressive on either the supports or the Storm Spirit, because without that, this is a much slower Ember Spirit buildup than I think we've seen today, at the very least. It's one where he is really reliant on A and just constantly spamming him. Even just farming this large camp is just not as efficient.
Gunnar.
Oh. Yeah, he saw A. He didn't see Alone.
The fade, though. He gets A out alone. Did he just revealed himself? This is a problem. Now he's going to get hit out. Curse Crown will be dodged, though. Well timed on that front, but runs right into Moo, so has to hit him up with the chains before he jumps away to another Remnant. That is enough to get him out, but that's dangerous. They have to use the ult there from the Mirana, and really all of that just comes off of Gunner just kind of zipping in. Didn't really even have to use that much mana for that one. So C4 Zoomer is starting to feel maybe a little bit more confident, and as you said, alone with this build, he doesn't quite have that same degree of durability, which normally you'd be okay with, right? Because you're trading it out for aggressive potential, but we haven't seen the aggressive plays out from him just yet. So they've got to try and get it going. They will go for the 3-man smoke here, alone in the 2 supports, making their way over, walking past the wards. So they are very sneaky. 4 Zoomers don't know it's coming, and here's going to be the play. They get the Searing Chains down, into the arrow, into the Illuminate. Gunner dropped low, but not dead, but he did just zip directly into Sacred, but Sacred, again, doesn't have much damage. Gunner's able to get away. Moon, meanwhile, creating a distraction in the river, and he actually gets out as well. Infamous, like halfway through the fight, they kind of forgot that they were supposed to be on the attack there. They just backed themselves out, seeing just how many enemy heroes were sort of rotating into the area, and there's a bit of a missed opportunity for them. 3-man smoke comes up empty.
Yeah, they're afraid of the turn. They don't want to get reinitiated on by the Storm Spirit without the pit. They really are helpless versus Gunner, and unfortunately for them, it just seems like the theme of the game now. As soon as they lose control of these areas, it feels so hard for them to actually make that play back. Even again, back to alone, he's not even decided what type of buildup he wants to go for in this game. I guess he's waiting to see if these Orchid components are coming out fast enough for him to instantly buy up that Yule Scepter, but just not having the confidence to immediately go in for an item like the Maelstrom is just really rough for him to deal with. I think that knowledge would really be key for him to make that type of decision, but if 4 Zoomers could just go immediately into the pit, this is so fast from them.
Yeah, they're going to make the move. They've got the armor reduction. They've got the damage. So they decide, why not? Let's give it a go. Infamous really... They don't have vision over this, and even if they did suspect it, their heroes are too far away. There's just not going to be a response, and should be Roche for free. Gunner,
Give it a Gunner.
making the space for it. So the Storm Spirit's just going to be able to run wild at this point. He's already kind of been doing that to this point in the game, and now he's got even more license to do so with 2 lives to work with.
Yeah, if there's one thing we can talk about with Infamous, we do have Lumiere still farming up, still going at an incredible rate. He is, I mean, second in net worth, but he is right up there with Costabile. Not just that, he's going to have his Manta almost before Gunner's going to have his Orchid, which is an incredible pace. I think a testament to him not getting that Falcon Blade, but unfortunately the supports is just going to happen.
Well, he tried. Made him work for it a little bit, but still going to be able to run him down as Gunner gets the kill, and these are the plays that I think 4 Zoomers are going to be really just constantly looking for. Take down 1 or 2 of those supports. It's not a crazy amount of gold, but it puts you in a position where the cores are farming on the side of Infamous, so they don't want to fight, and the supports are a vast majority of the time going to be either dead or under threat, so they're not going to be able to get aggressive here either, and if Infamous have no one who's looking for these plays, it feels like a situation where 4 Zoomers could just keep on chipping away at their defenses and slowly push them further and further back.
Yeah, and Alone eventually does decide just to buy out that Yule Scepter as almost harmoniously. Gunner is also going to have his Orchid around the same time, but also feels like where do Infamous actually make their plays? They have this slight Ember Spirit who unfortunately is not feeling nearly as ahead as he needs to be to actually carry this game, and that's why I think large in part from Infamous we've only seen them smoke as 3 people, because their active members are just them. If Alone can get this chains on the Seafric, that'd be a kill, but they just don't have the vision to make a lot of these plays, and more so, they just don't have the range, and I don't think too many offlaners would have fixed that, but I think 4 Zoomers have really drafted them into a corner.
Yeah, right now, Sacred, I mean, the impact is just basically non-existent. He wasn't able to get over to the mid or top lanes in time to defend the tower, so he doesn't fill that role. He doesn't really have a lot of lockdown, so he's not your initiator right now either, although he's working on it with the Rod of Atos. Maybe that'll help out, but right now, he's getting jumped in on. Silence comes in, Curse Crown deployed. He is going to try to get himself out of here, but with the Omni in from Costabile, they just take him down easily, and they're right in onto the tower, and now that was supposed to be your frontliner, who is gone. Infamous, even if they rotate the rest of the lineup up here, don't really have that person who can stand in front and absorb that damage. So for Zoomers, they're just free to keep pushing. Tier 2 tower should be taken here with really no resistance.
Yeah, and they don't even have the best Jug draft. They don't have an offlaner that naturally is good at hitting towers. They don't have a hero like Jakiro that's very good at taking away that control that the tower could provide. but instead they are just constantly finding these really good trades. I'm thinking in the back of my mind that Lumiere is off somewhere farming, doing what he can, but I'm also just seeing all of the control and tempo that Networth are taking, or that Four Zoomers are taking away from Infamous just at every spot. This is pre-Blink Dagger on Moo. Moo hasn't gotten a chance to flex his muscles yet. Now he has it, so it just feels like the plays are getting easier and easier for Four Zoomers to make, while Infamous are kind of sitting on their hands. They haven't even died. It's 6-3 right now. This is an incredibly low kill game, but it's just because I think the supports aren't giving each other's the play. It's just unfortunate. One just aggressively Yules. He's got a remnant, but he got... Okay.
I I thought for sure that that plan was Yules and leave, but he keeps on going. He wanted to clear out that creep wave before he goes, I guess, but that kind of greed is just so costly. Maybe he doesn't see Moo, something along those lines. I'm not really sure, but that is a very costly play, because now alone, I mean, he's down for only about 10 more seconds, but you see Four Zoomers, the second they see that Ember's dead, they go. They're going to look for the fight. They blink in, they get the silence and the stun onto the Mirana. Nice defensive Yules, though, going to keep him alive, but it looks like this is already turning into a bit of a retreat as Michael is going to get run down. Costabile, meanwhile, spinning his way in onto A. They'll take him down as well, and now they try to turn their attention onto the Morph. He was able to waveform away, though, but that means Sacred is in the line of fire, trying to zip in onto him, but Gunnar at this point didn't really have the damage to go in on that by himself. They did still have quite a lot defensively to work with, but now if you're Infamous, can you really afford to turn around at this point? Sacred got a nice pit down onto Gunnar, but see Lumiere and Alone, neither one of them really wants to jump in on that play, and while they hesitate, Kostabile just goes in for the objective.
Yeah, they do get their glyph refreshed, so this bottom lane is not a push. They can't actually afford to go there, but at the same time, Kostabile is just hunting. Ooh. He's waiting for someone weak to walk up that hill. Like, not him. He's got a Yules.
Ooh. Oh, jumps in. They get the bash into the crush. Michael's able to leap away, though. And, oh, that's an interesting one. Root into arrow. Do they actually want to take this fight, though? Saba's right next to his teammate, but there's a lot of heroes coming in. They're going to look for it. Hand of God comes through. Moo not dead yet. Went for another crush, trying to get himself out of here, but the Starstorm, actually the DOT from Sacred is what gets the kill. So Moo will fall. Michael dead as well. Kostabile spins and TPs. Not willing to stick around much longer. Very much the wiser decision on his part as he does back out, and Infamous's patience there is sort of rewarded, at least in terms of the kill, but you still see them sort of operating in a smaller and smaller area, and right on cue, yeah, Alone gets picked off. Gunnar and Z-Freak are in. Sacred tries to drop down a little bit at the back end, but it's just not enough to matter. This Pit of Malice, it's not as strong, it's not as much of a deterrent as Infamous need it to actually be.
Yeah, and what's becoming the game is if they're not right next to their towers, then Sacred can't be mobile enough to be everywhere, so you need to start running at your opponents, otherwise you're always playing behind them, and that's just not something you can do versus Four Zoomers. I think it was a good punish on the Moo. This is before BKB, that's before Force Staffs, and of course there aren't too many defensive items like that, but I mean, Husky has a Greaves. He is so rich on this gen. They could just keep this fight going for a while. I think he just physically wasn't close enough to save Moo there. I think if he gets the Greaves off, then maybe that Slardar doesn't even die, but that's the heal strat, where suddenly this is just becoming a damage issue where Infamous can't really supply what Four Zoomers are putting out, and that's where, again, everything is going to come back to Lumiere. He's not even getting an Ethblade, though. He's going for the Scotty instead, saying that I not only need to do more damage, but I need to have a few items to kite the jug, as well as just reducing your damage or your healing straight up. So we'll have to see if that's really the best option for him, but this second time today where we're seeing a team with Ember Morph and just having very slow damage.
Mm-hmm. The idea that you have their theoretical damage, which is really quite high, but you have a period like this where if one of those two heroes, one of the two didn't straight up win their lane, they need to share space, and Four Zoomers recognized that. They immediately pushed, as we were sort of mentioning. They got the top towers, they took the tier 1 mid, and you were already going to have issues, right? Sharing the map with two hard farming heroes like that, and now you have even less space to work with. So it's just going to be tough for Infamous, and the worst part about it is that your third core is an Underlord, who I don't really know what he does for them right now. He's got the Atos, but we haven't seen this Dark Rift be used at all because they're never the team really pushing. They just don't have opportunities to take advantage of that hero.
Yeah, we're never seeing the split push to the bottom lane, an impossible fight that they can just immediately dodge. I don't think we've seen a Dark Rift just yet, and it's stuff like that that kind of makes you a little bit sad for Infamous. This is also a four Zoomers who will literally not throw the game. They will wait, bind their time, sit on their hands until the second Aegis is up, and then they will start to take all of your outer towers. They're so methodical with their new approach.
Jump onto Alone. They get the blink, they get the
Got a
crush,
remnant.
the Ember. Oh, the
Oh, it's
fear, it's
perfect.
timed out so well, but they still need to catch up to him. There we go. They're in onto Alone. They take him down, and now if you're Infamous, there really isn't much more of a fight. Your Morphling does not have the damage to do this by himself, so they just have to sort of fall back, and this just feels like that situation we're getting closer and closer, ET, to the zone where Infamous need a mistake from their opponents. It feels like a lot of their own agency has just been taken away or thrown away in a lot of these circumstances.
Yeah, they're going to continue to struggle to make a lot of these plays. Meanwhile, Gunner, well, he'd love Lumiere, but I think he's going to take Sacred.
Yep, Sacred in some trouble, trapped up. Michael tries to throw the arrow, but that's a problem. He gets hit up by the Dark Troll Summoner with the root into Cristabile, just hitting him with the Omni. Both of those heroes will fall, and now A is going to get run down as well. Gunner's got more than enough mana to finish off this kill. And he is going to be able to get it, but Lumiere tries to come in, move, good defensive move, but Gunner's still dropping. He may actually go down. Can they save him? No, they can't. Lumiere, big kill there, lots of gold into the Morphling's hands, but you had to sacrifice half your lineup to make that play in the first place. So it's good for Lumiere on an individual level, but for Infamous, it's just really more of the same struggles for them in these fights.
Yeah, and now the question is, what does Infamous do about this next Roche? Will they defend it? Will they instead decide to keep these towers alive just a little bit longer? It's that type of decision-making that is really going to be breakneck. Lumiere is going to have his Scotty if they do want to look at that Roche fight, but also, all these heroes are running at Costabile in the bottom lane, but worst comes to worst, he spins TPs, and he's out.
Yeah, there it is.
There you go.
Well, I don't really know there. You laid it out perfectly. He goes for that exact play, but you still have 3 or 4 heroes from Infamous who made their way over, so not really sure what they were hoping to happen. They are grouped up now, so maybe now, yeah, maybe now is the point rather where you go for the smoke and push towards the pit, see if 4 Zoomers are taking it. If not, look for some sort of fight. And Infamous, if this is going to work, they have to be the team initiating. They have been reacting all game long to their opponent's moves, but that's a problem. Scan comes through. They know that someone's in the area. I think they could take a guess at what's up at this stage, and 4 Zoomers, what do they want to do? For now, they just move their way up. Costabile and Lumiere both have their smokes popped, so both teams at least partially aware of where the other sort of is, but what does this really lead to? They're just hanging out on their opposite sides of the river. Meanwhile, Husky's army is actually pushing out the bottom lane. So even if this remains a sort of standoff scenario, 4 Zoomers can come out ahead with the split push.
Yep, and it's something that he does every single time. He sticks 2 or 3 creeps in one lane, and then suddenly it is a split push threat that you have to address. Of course, Alone is arguably the best hero at dealing with split push, being the Ember Spirit, but at the same time, I am also just a little bit concerned. Of course, these creeps, they don't time out, but they also don't really regen all too much as well, so he does need to be careful about these HP pools. He doesn't want to lose anyone just yet. He would love the Hand of God, but of course, you don't want to do that just for the creeps, especially because he's about to be level 12, go to 275 to 450 HP, but then the damage issues are still plentiful for Infamous. It still feels like even if they hit absolutely everything, their most damaging spell is just an arrow, a huge arrow, and maybe Lumiere right-clicking someone for 5 seconds before Mu tries to really discombobulate and get him out of the fight. I think it's really patient from both teams. Oh, maybe that patience is going to come to an end with Costabile getting a DD. I think they might try to force it now.
They do now presumably have the firepower to make that happen, so we'll see what it is they do. In the meantime, Alone, he's got a Maelstrom, so it's going to be a nice little bit of extra damage, helps him clear out those creep waves faster, but now he's got to sort of keep an eye, on the push. He's going to make his way back over to his teammates, and they're going to have to go fast, because Roche is just melting. Look at that. It's already done. It's too late. Sabale gets it. He'll take the Aegis. Mu is going to be able to pick up the shard, and I, I'm not really sure that Infamous could have done anything there unless they would have pushed in 5 to 10 seconds earlier, and at that point they didn't even have their full lineup ready to go. So, you know, the speed with which 4 Zoomers can push in there, something Infamous weren't necessarily prepared for, and now Sabale gets hit up by an arrow. They're not willing to take that bait. Even if they kill off the Juggernaut once, they'd have to deal with him a second time. So they do back themselves out, but did Husky... Yeah, Husky was the one who was given that shard, so he's got himself some Ancients, and I mean, it was already tough enough to deal with Husky in terms of that split push play. Now he's got even more to work with the Ancients instead of the normal creeps, so what do? If you're Infamous and you try to fight, you're fighting into a Jug with 2 lives. You're fighting up against a Storm Spirit who you have struggled to contain to this point in the game. You don't have any significant damage coming out from your offlaner, and if you choose to just sit back and not fight, 4 Zoomers have the ability to just split push you to death.
Yeah, and that's where Infamous do have an option to not fight. They can definitely wait for Lumiere to get strong enough to just kill everyone. That is definitely a very scary, realistic possibility for them in this game. Of course, he's not going for the Ags build, even though there's a will in the game. He doesn't have that guaranteed morph, so he's not throwing anything away. But he also doesn't have a BKB. All it takes is one bad death from Lumiere, and suddenly the game is looking incredibly grim for Infamous. At least with Lumiere constantly farming, you do have an out. It just feels like they're going to need to trade everything to try and keep this game going forward. That's also where I think they're playing versus really the strength of their high ground. If there's one thing that's hard to break, it's going to be Pitworth high ground, and they're going to make them work really hard for it, but we'll have to see how they play with this Aegis. If Infamous can hold off this Aegis, this is a huge timing for 4 Zoomers, and they don't win now, then the game does get hairier. Lumiere didn't morph, but he's fine.
Yeah, Mu can't win this, and he's already starting to back himself away, realizing this is not a fight that really goes the way I want it to. But now, look at Infamous. They TP'd heroes in. They're going to look for the fight. Can they catch up to Z-Freak? He's going to be running out of time on the Glimmer in just a few seconds. And Alone is right on top of him. Sleight of Fist comes in. Lumiere waves forward, and well, maybe he would have been better off just holding that. Terrorize going to be down for a little bit. It did technically connect, but not really in a position that mattered. So if you're Infamous, you got the kill. The problem is, elsewhere on the map, you've got Costabile sort of pushing his way in, and
What did you learn?
final outer tower does get taken. So Infamous need that high ground. But again, as you mentioned, this is where Sacred is maybe going to get his shot at redemption, his time to shine, because as you said, he's very good at keeping those waves out of the base, just shoving them as hard as he can.
And he's trying to do everything with this Aegis here on Costabile, but you know that he wants to get some defining push. He wants to get a Rax, but unfortunately, Gunnar has also kind of eased off. He's definitely been playing a lot safer. I don't think he wants to throw this game away. Not going for the BKB. He's definitely been more subtle with his Stormplay going forward. He's really slowed down to finish up this Ags, but he does have an Ags now. So that could be your game ender. You get a 3-man zip into a 3-man crush. They all get ruined by Corrosive Haze, and then the game might end off of that. But if they don't find that opportunity, then again, if this Aegis is timing out in a minute here, and your next opportunity is a lot more time for Lumiere to finish up possibly another 2 items before that another Roche respawns here. So it's definitely the safe road, but you almost wonder if 4 Zoomers are being a little bit too safe right now.
There is that fine line between patience and just sort of hesitating too long, right? So you need to make sure you're not giving all that much time to Lumiere, otherwise it could turn around. As Alone, that's an interesting
Really
play.
smart.
Tries to cut, doesn't get all of it. Would have stuck around, but really I don't think you should. You just sort of leave yourself open, and there were multiple heroes making their way top at that point.
Yeah, they also have placed some really nice vision, especially this ward all the way out here, just knowing that he has a little alcove in the top lane to play in, and that's where Gunnar is chasing him from one side of the map to the other. And he's dodged.
Zip. Didn't get it, yeah, so... Oh, Alone doing his own work here in terms of drawing this out, and this is not just sort of extending the match for its own sake. Alone, very slowly, is finding farm for himself. His net worth is just going to have to get pulled out of the dumpster here, but bit by bit, you're going to see him start building himself up. And I think the best part about these plays for the Ember is that none of it's coming at the expense of Lumiere. So you are still going all in on the Morphlings farm, whilst simultaneously trying to salvage something from your Ember, and all while continuing to hold the high ground. Four Zoomers did nothing with that Aegis. Constabulary let it time out, and they did not get into that position to break the base like they wanted.
Yep, and that's where the big items are coming. Lumiere, he's got that F-Blade if he really wanted to. He's probably going to play around buyback because he knows that there's a very easy way to lose this game, but that also just comes back to the passivity and what do we actually want to accomplish here for four Zoomers? What do we need to actually win this game now is probably the question they're asking themselves. They were winning this game so hard 15 minutes ago. It felt like their opponents were just losing. They were going to lose in 25 minutes, but instead, they're definitely, like we keep saying, taking the slow road. Roche could be respawning in 2 minutes here, could be respawning in 4 minutes if they're unlucky with it, but that is a big timing. And Infamous, they're also not doing anything. They're not smoking, they're not making a play out, they're not trying to reclaim their vision. They're definitely playing like they are losing this match, and they will make a smoke now, but that's where this might be the changeup that catches someone off guard. Moo would be a very nice pick, but it's too fast. Good reaction.
You needed that damage immediately, really, and they don't have it, so Moo's able to get away. And the Morph, I mean, he wants to find a target, right? That E-Blade was finished off, so he's got the potential to just blow someone up quickly, but for Zoomers, I like this maneuver in terms of pulling back and not presenting a target. I just don't like it from the standpoint of you just sort of keep this, or let this game keep on dragging on, and you start really just getting more and more concerned, right? The longer that this goes on, Infamous were so far behind earlier on in this game that it feels better for them now, relatively speaking. Even with them still down by 18k, the gap may remain as large as it is, but the power of Infamous is starting to increase. And, well, they're going to look for another smoke play. Alone didn't quite get the jump back in time, so he's not going to be included in this, but it feels like the Ember's going to be the trailer on this play either way, so... Well, maybe not the trailer, maybe the bait. They're going to lay him out mid, but...
They want Gunner.
They get Gunner. They're in onto him. They've got the root. The Yule Scepter is going to be used to set up the arrow. They get the stun. They get the kill. And now they want even more. Push forward, trying to get in onto Moo, but he immediately goes in for that stun. Alone is in some serious trouble. They have to be able to save him, and they can't. Alone goes down. Infamous still trying to fight, but the fight's getting a little bit broken up. And here comes Lumiere, pushing his way forward, trying to get onto Constabulary, but he's hit up by the Crush into the Omni. And he just needed to stay with his teammates, really. The rest of the lineup was still in the jungle, and it's all just going to fall apart. Once Lumiere's dead, there's really not much more they can do. Sacred gets the Dark Rift out, but it's just going to be him who makes it home, and that is really not the fight. That's 4 dead for Gunner, and I mean, for Zoomers, all this time we were sort of wondering, what's their path to the high ground? How do they get through? How can they deal with Sacred and the wave clear? And
yeah, they literally
wow,
called it.
All right, yeah.
They literally know. I mean, that really is so unfortunate. One waveform, and you're done. You're done playing Dota. That's the type of game that Infamous were definitely forced into. But I think a little bit of a degree of frustration there from Infamous, because 4 Zoomers just would give them absolutely nothing. They really just never put a hole anywhere for Infamous to look for any type of play, any type of pickoff. They had the one separation on Moo bottom, but that was it. It was the one separation. The rest of the lineup was just always together all the time, and that's how they've been winning in this tournament. But man, that is painful versus a team like Infamous.
Yeah, I mean, we know that it's possible for a team to sort of get picked apart in that regard, but we would never expect Infamous to be the ones who just get sort of beat up like that. It was, well, painful to watch seems a little bit harsh, just very frustrating. Infamous could never really get anything going. We were talking about it in, well, a bit of a hopeful fashion. You know, they're drawing the game out. Lumiere's building up more. Maybe this, maybe that. Maybe's all over the place, because that's all Infamous had. There was no guarantee. Everything was a maybe for them, and 4 Zoomers at a certain point they're just too good with this strategy. They completely shut down every possible avenue, and as you saw there in that last fight, it really doesn't do much. Alone gets caught out in an awkward spot. He gets taken down with no backup. Lumiere gets into an awkward spot, taken down with no backup. That's not exactly a trend that you want, as 4 Zoomers were able to close it out.
Yeah, it's just cold. That's probably the best word to describe it. It's just they have the same lead that they had what 10, 15 minutes ago, maintained through that entire time. It never increased, it never decreased, and nothing happened. That game was in a time freeze for the longest time, and it's so sad to lose with Gunner respawning like that. Like you had it. You had the beginning to what was probably the infamous comeback right there, and then it's just one decision, and then you're done. That's got to be the worst feeling, especially for Lumiere.
Yeah. But now, if you're Infamous, honestly, you lose the first game, but I think they just need to write that one off because that got funky really right in the draft with some of the choices, the Underlord getting picked up for them. So go into game two, maybe look for something a little more. I don't want to say normal, but really that's kind of got to be it. Conventional is maybe the more polite phrase. Get sacred on someone who's going to be more of a playmaker, even if it does mean having to go for that offlaner a little bit earlier on. We were surprised in that game one draft when both sides looked for the mid lane early. Maybe if you're Infamous, even if four Zoomers make the same move, you don't look to match it. Because I think without Sacred on any sort of playmaking hero, there just really wasn't a whole lot for them to do.
Yeah, there are a lot of weird things from that. I mean, Sacred's playing Pit Ward, alone isn't skilling Flame Guard. G next. G next.
Oh well. Get it out of your mind. It's a tough loss, but there's a reason why it's a 2-game series, right? Infamous are going to get an opportunity to redeem themselves, try and get that 1-1 split, keep themselves uh, really right behind four Zoomers at this point in the standings. So we'll see if they can get that split or if four Zoomers are going to be able to create a little bit of extra separation with that 2-0 sweep. So we will be stepping away for a moment, but when we come back, it'll be the final game of the night, game two between four Zoomers and Infamous.